Let's be honest, dry soil can feel like a lost cause. You water it and it just runs off. You mulch it and, well, it still cracks open like a desert floor. You dig into it, hoping to find some wriggling life. But there's nothing. No worms, no moisture, no smell of healthy earth, just dust, grit, and honestly, a whole lot of frustration. It's the kind of soil that kills seeds, stunts roots, and yeah, drives gardeners crazy. And here's the hard truth, without earthworms, that soil stays dead. But what if the problem isn't just the dryness? What if you're not giving worms the right invitation? Worms don't just show up because the soil is mulched or watered. They follow scent trails, they seek out food, they're drawn to microbial heat, fermented decay, and moist fungus-rich material. So instead of forcing compost on top or tilling endlessly, there's a better way. A natural lure system that pulls worms into even the driest, most lifeless ground, using 5 surprisingly gross but genius fermentation tricks. These are techniques borrowed from nature, perfected in gardens, and they work whether your soil is sandy, sun-baked, or compacted clay. Let's start with the first and most powerful, the fermented bread slurry. This trick uses moldy bread soaked in rainwater and left to sour for 2 to 3 days in the shade. During that time, the bread breaks down into a sticky, yeasty mess rich in wild microbes and fungi, exactly the kind of scent that attracts earthworms from a distance. Once it's soft and bubbling, dig a shallow pit in your dry soil, pour the mixture in, and cover it with a thin layer of soaked cardboard or leaves. The slurry holds moisture, begins microbial decomposition underground, and creates a cool, damp zone that worms can't resist. Within a week, you'll see tunnel openings appear, and the soil will start to darken from within. The second method is even more off-putting, but even more effective: fermented banana peel mash. Bananas are high in sugars and potassium, and when left to ferment in a sealed container for 4 days with a splash of water, they turn into a sweet-smelling sludge loaded with microbes. But it's not just the sugar that works here, it's the smell. Fermenting banana peels mimic the scent of overripe fruit decomposing in nature, which signals a safe, food-rich environment to nearby worms. The key is burying it shallowly under mulch, not too deep, so the scent can rise while the moisture stays locked in. This not only attracts worms but kickstarts microbial activity that helps rebuild humus. The third method taps into one of nature's favorite foods: fermented grass clippings. When fresh-cut grass is packed tightly into a bucket with a little water and left for a week, it turns into a stinking anaerobic soup. To us it smells like lawn rot, but to worms, it's an irresistible buffet. The fermentation breaks down tough cellulose, releasing lactic acid bacteria and pre-digested nutrients. When added to dry soil in trenches or pockets, this mixture acts like a microbial bomb, releasing gases, moisture, and warmth that beckon worms from deeper layers or surrounding zones. It's particularly effective in sandy or nutrient-poor soil that needs a boost in organic content. Next is the forgotten trick of using fermented kitchen scraps, but with a twist. Instead of burying raw scraps directly into the soil, which can dry out and repel worms in dry climates, first ferment them Bokashi style. This involves mixing chopped kitchen waste with a microbial inoculant, like EM1 or bran soaked in molasses and water, and sealing it in an airtight container for 10 to 14 days. By the end of the process, the food scraps are pickled, partially broken down, and loaded with beneficial microbes. When added to the soil, they don't heat up or rot aggressively. Instead, they meld into the underground structure quietly and safely, making them perfect bait for earthworms in fragile, dry zones. Just cover with mulch water lightly and walk away. In about 2 weeks, you'll notice richer soil, better moisture retention, and new worm burrows appearing. The fifth and final method might be the most underrated of them all: fermented aloe leaf slurry. Aloe vera, when blended with water and left to ferment for several days, turns into a thick, slippery, jelly-like liquid rich in enzymes and plant sugars. When added to dry soil, especially in small underground pockets, this fermented aloe acts as both a moisture magnet and a biological stimulant. It softens the surrounding particles, encourages fungal colonization, and makes the area ideal for worm habitation. Aloe also contains saponins, which, when fermented, become food for certain soil bacteria that are worm-friendly. The result is a small, cool biome in the middle of otherwise lifeless dirt, and worms will naturally migrate toward it as they detect the bioactivity. Now here's the real beauty behind these methods. They don't just lure worms, they begin the humus-making process instantly. Each fermented attractant doesn't just feed worms, it feeds fungi, bacteria, and protozoa. It cools the soil, raises microbial populations, and binds particles together. As the worms move in and begin to eat, they leave behind castings, moist, sticky humus full of nutrients and beneficial microbes. These castings then support more plant roots, hold more water, and attract even more worms. It becomes a self-sustaining loop of life, all starting with something most people would throw away or avoid. Dry soil doesn't have to stay dry, worms don't have to stay away, but you do have to work with nature, not against it. And fermentation is one of nature's oldest tricks, used by forests, compost piles, and wild ecosystems to break down the tough, the dry, and the uninhabitable. If your soil is cracked, dusty, or wormless, now's the time to try something different. Try something that smells bad but works brilliantly. Try something that makes your neighbors raise an eyebrow, but makes your garden come alive from the bottom up. If you found this guide useful, do your soil a favor. Subscribe to Hydrohaven and share this video with a fellow gardener who's struggling with dry, lifeless beds. Remember, the answer to better soil isn't always pretty, but it sure is powerful. Let the fermentation begin, and let the worms come marching in.